Good afternoon. Welcome to this Journey to Treasury 2020 session. Welcome to our panel. And let me introduce first myself. So I'm Francois Masquelier. I'm the chairman of the Luxembourg Treasury Association of Corporate Treasurers. And I'm also the vice chair of EACT, the European Association of Corporate Treasurers. And you know that ACT is a member of EACT. So in mid-September, we have released the 5th edition of the Journey to Treasury. It's a treasury roadmap produced by 4 partners, BNP Paribas, PwC, ACP, and the European Association of Corporate Treasurers, EACT. GTT is a thought leadership initiative, so the aim is to help finance professionals and treasurers to resolve some of their intricate puzzles. The approach consists of selecting hot topics in Treasury, choosing case studies, and sharing views with professionals. Through the noise and confusion that often seems to be the trademark of the modern world of finance, several crucial questions emerge from all sections of the financial community. For example, what is worth paying attention to? Which technologies are going to impact my decisions? What trends and initiatives will be truly transformative? Of the many initiatives on the way, which will be the key to my journey. The outcome is unique in the world of corporate treasury. It's a collaborative, multi-angle view dedicated to professional treasurers in a volatile world. So businesses change. The regulatory and technological context of doing business changes. And how innovation happens and how IT systems are designed is changing too. Each of the 4 Journey to Treasury contributors offers their own expertise gained from their own journey in this bumpy but yet encouraging landscape. So the report is not simply a compendium of industry hot topics, it's also a comprehensive shopping list of problems a corporate treasurer is confronted to. It is a selective, intelligent-led collaborative analysis of the themes that are most relevant in our view today. This leaflet offers a pragmatic vision of Treasury present and future, and we see them as a reference document for corporate treasurers to navigate in this rapidly changing landscape. This year, for obvious reasons, on top of the classic JTT edition, we have decided to launch few COVID-19 special editions with a webinar. As individuals and companies, we find ourselves in exceptional circumstances that few, if any, could have foreseen. So BCP, Business Contingent Plan, and program have been triggered worldwide, but many of these plans did not anticipate the global reach of health crisis. So the Journey to Treasury by-side series provided support for treasurers as they navigate with this challenging period. So you will find outcome in the edition as well as a result of the European survey launched by EACT. But let's start with our panel session, and let me introduce first our 4 panelists of today. So we have 3 lady treasurers. As you all know, diversity is key for ACT, but also for EACT, and a man banker. So our panelists of today are Sarah Jane Hall, Group Treasurer at GSK, Susan Perry, Assistant Group Treasurer at RELX, Isabelle Badou, General Manager, Head of in-house Bank and Treasury Co-Model at SANOFI Europe Treasury Center, Brussels. And we have also, as I said, Jan Dirk van Beuzekamp, Head of Strategic Marketing, Cash Management and Trade Solution at BNP Paribas. So as we will start soon, I will ask you when you start answering the first question, maybe to briefly introduce yourself, 1 or 2 sentences to explain your role, the company you work for, and again, thanks a lot for being with us today. So let's start maybe with Sarah Jane, if you don't mind. So we face one of the biggest financial crises of our history, and it's not over, I'm afraid. In your opinion, Sarah, what are the solutions and remedies to be implemented to prevent next crisis and become more resilient?
Okay, so hi everybody, I'm Sarah Jane Hall. I'm the Group Treasurer of GlaxoSmithKline. I have been at SmithKline actually 25 years ago, and then we did the merger a few years later, and I've been Treasurer of GSK for about 19 years at the moment. So I've got a little bit of experience of managing various crises down the years, which is certainly interesting, and I certainly agree that this crisis is not over yet. The statistics on COVID are horrible every single day, including this morning. And we've got the end of the Brexit transition period to look forward to. So there will certainly be a rocky road even in the coming months, in my opinion. So as I said, I've managed Treasury through the global financial crisis in 2008, as well as the crisis we faced this year. And as treasurers, our number one objective for any company is to manage liquidity. As we know, no company goes bust due to a downturn. It goes bust because the creditors are no longer willing to extend the credit. So I've found these two crises completely different, one from the other. 2020 has been saved by the speed of action of the Fed, the ECB, and the Bank of England, with no doubt. But in my opinion, it was also a worse credit crisis than 2008 because the commercial paper market in the US came to an end during March for some issuers. So it was a big struggle in a way that 2008 wasn't actually. And of course, since then, the government has done a lot of other initiatives to keep everybody, keep the economy going and keep people employed and try and work out how we're going to get through this. So I think solutions and remedies for corporates, what needs to improve. I think that it has been extremely hard working from home for all these months during the crisis. I far prefer group decision making and the ability to be together in the office and to talk about how we're going to solve problems rather than spending all day on a video call like this one. However, we need access to information is absolutely key. GSK has invested in a global SAP platform. By the end of this year, 96% of our operations will be on one instance of SAP. And that's extremely powerful for us. So I think that all companies have invested in ERP systems over the last few years, and being able to leverage that investment is an extremely important thing. I also think that it's important to keep looking at the scenarios that we're trying to plan for. So we've got a sort of business as usual scenario, products keep selling, people keep getting vaccinated, and it all keeps going. And then we've got a sort of medium impact COVID scenario and a severe impact COVID scenario. And of course, with Treasury, with the glass always is half empty, what we're planning for is the severe impact. So it is important to look at the liquidity position from the worst case scenario at all times. And I also think we need a changed approach to problem solving at GSK. As I said, we've had various crises, some of them to do with Europe, some of them to do with Greece, some of them to do with global financial crises and so on. And we're pretty good at crisis management. And I think as treasurers, we're also good at managing in a crisis. But do we spend enough time in between the crises talking about how we're going to manage the next crisis? Probably not. We have our business continuity programs. We practice them once a year. And never in a month of Sundays would we envisage we'd be practicing that every day since the middle of March. So I think some time spent looking at how organizations manage crises is time very well spent. And I'm a big believer in communication. So how we communicate with not only our teams, but across the organization and across the world is incredibly important. And to find different and innovative ways of doing that is important. And I think there's changes also in the way we staff the department. So we'll probably need in the future more pop-up skills, people we can pull in at short notice to plug a gap or help in a crisis or whatever's going on. A more flexible workforce is also going to be important. I was going to say something about committed bank facilities at this point, but it might be a bit controversial with the number of bankers on the phone. But, my point on this is they should be able to be drawn. It's sort of, we sign the facilities, we pay the commitment fees, and then the bankers throw up their arms in horror when these need to be drawn. But we've got two types of facilities at GSK, and one bank of facilities, I say, we're not going to draw on those unless hell freezes over. And the other bank facilities, I say, we're paying the commitment fees and we will draw on these facilities if we need them. But that sort of gets forgotten over time. And I know that clearly during March, a lot of corporates drew down on their bank facilities. And that was a very difficult place for the banks to be in at the time. So I think, how the regulators and the banks and the corporates all work together to plan for a crisis is also incredibly important. The ACT has a lot of involvement with the Bank of England, which is a good thing. I speak regularly to the banks, or another good thing. But again, do we spend enough time looking forward to the next crisis? I better stop there, otherwise I'll go on too long.
Okay, thanks a lot. So, no, but I keep on what you say that outsourcing could be quite important and useful to adjust the team and not to be overstated. And I've heard a lot of peers talking about that. And you mentioned the skills. We need to have the right skills and more IT skills, I guess, for obvious reason. I do believe that centralization and automation are also two ways to be more resilient. It brings me to Sanofi and to Isabel. Isabel, at Sanofi, you have decided to completely revamp your IT architecture at the treasury level. And it was even decided before the COVID, if I'm correct. And you are live since September. Could you tell us more about your project and your objectives?
Yeah, thank you, Francois. So I'm Isabelle Badou. I'm a general manager of a financial affiliate of Sanofi, located in Brussels, and I joined Sanofi about 8 years ago. And indeed, we Sanofi took the decision, it's about 2.5 years ago, to start a transformation journey. That was an overall finance transformation journey, and Treasury joined that effort. Sanofi grew through acquisitions. So we had a ecosystem and an architecture that was quite complicated, with difficult access to the information, not uniform processes. So definitely the ambition of Sanofi was to not only rationalize that ecosystem, but take the opportunity to review the processes and rationalize such processes. Also review the access to the data. Sarah Jean indicated that indeed during crisis times, access to the data is critical. So that was one of the objectives of the transformation project. So overall, the ambition was to set solid foundations. So starting really from the basics, processes, data, systems, but also adopt the new technologies. That was something that was very important as well, because it could enable you to get to the next level. And digitalization, we've seen, is very important nowadays. So the objectives, to summarize, with 4 axes: make it right. So high focus on internal controls, because especially within treasury area, compliance and internal control is really, and security are key. Make it work. So building foundations, and now we're leveraging the foundations and the technology for Calvin. Because we do have the processes that are standardized. Make it simple. I think that rationalizing the ecosystem and having a direct access to the information is simplifying the life of Treasury, but also makes it more agile in terms of its decision-making process. And then make it nice, because user experience is also a key factor. So we decided to implement the SAP Treasury solution, which got deployed together with the One ERP project. So as you indicated, Francois, we are live on the major global treasury processes since September the 1st. So it's pretty recent, and we are now having our first quarter end closing. which is happening in a smooth way. And we had previously deployed local treasury processes together with the one ERP for European countries and the US. So getting to the next level will be the deployment of the Treasury solution beyond the ERP deployment. So in order to enhance the cash visibility at a worldwide scale, also enhance or streamline the bank connectivity at a worldwide scale, but also leverage those processes and technologies in context of carve-in operations. So this is what is next on our agenda.
A great challenge, and we were talking with Sarah Jane about outsourcing, and I know that you were intensive on this heavy journey, and I fully agree with you. Internal controls and mitigated risk is quite important because we have also noticed during the crisis that fraud risk has increased significantly over the last months and since mid-March. So maybe let's move to Susan and Susan Perry. Susan, you have developed additional reports, so your approach was different because you have your current TMS, and it was maybe not delivering what you were expecting in terms of requested functionalities or report. It looks like you have adopted an alternative solution, and you have preferred to use a best of breed approach with a top layer, or what we call a ETL solution, to develop the missing pieces in terms of reporting, dashboarding. Could you explain what you have developed over the last months?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to introduce myself, Suzanne Perry, I've been the Assistant Group Treasurer at RELX for about the last 6.5 years. RELX used to be Reed Elsevier. I've been with the company about 20 years in various roles, but in my current role in recent years, I've relocated our principal Treasury Centre, including all the IT, from Switzerland across to the UK. That was last year. So I've now got the UK Treasury Centre of about 15 people reporting up into me. Just also to give a bit of background on RELX, because it's not really a sort of high street name, we're FTSE 20, and we provide sort of information-based analytics and decision tools, but to sort of professionals and businesses. But actually the majority of our revenues are electronic. So about 9,000 of our 33,000 employees worldwide are actually technologists. And $1.4 billion of our spend every year is on technologies. So although that's clearly, not treasury, there is quite an awareness around RELX that technology can bring a lot of benefits. And within our back office function in the Treasury Centre, we actually have 2 IT specialists. The more senior one used to be at one of the TMS providers. Going on to the question, it wasn't so much that the TMS didn't have the functionality. It was more it didn't have the functionality in the way we wanted it. So for a long time, we've taken the approach that the sort of TMS is the kind of source of truth. And primarily we have that to kind of hold our trade information, but we don't use it for anything non-standard or scenario analysis. We want it very much to hold the information on the actuals and not start tweaking around with what if scenarios. The TMS. It first came up when we had to move to IFRS probably about 15 years ago. We found that the TMS didn't have what we wanted to do the valuation reporting and the effectiveness tests. So we partnered with a company called FinMetrics that we're actually still working with today. And we use their system, as you say, as a top layer or sort of ETL. And we sort of pull information out of the Treasury management system and a few other sources. And we've got automated reporting that we do now. And the auditors are happy because the outputs from that are Excel, and we have sort of additional tabs where they can go in and check what the source information was and tick everything. That's the history. In recent years, we're really, as part of relocating the Treasury Centre to the UK, we've taken the opportunity, we've got new people, a fresh pair of eyes. We're really going through everything again to see if there's anything additional we can automate. And we're also, with COVID, we're going through improving our cash flow forecasting, and making it easier for the team, who are quite a new team, to see if there's any funding needs coming up. And we also have done quite a lot of work for sort of dashboard information. So rather than having to go in and run a report, there's a dashboard I can look at to kind of see the valuation of our derivatives and are we in line with our hedging policies. For us, I think we think more automation kind of means less fat fingers on any inputs, and we can kind of push down to maybe more junior team members some of the work, whereas before we wouldn't have really trusted them to know exactly how to analyse things, and we would have kept things with more senior staff.
Okay, thanks a lot. So, Jan Dirk, a question for you from a bank point of view. So, how is BNP Paribas and maybe some other bank addressing the need from customers for more digitization? You should play a role, and especially with the PSD2. So, are you developing APIs for and maybe with your customers? And could you give us a few examples of what you have developed over the last months and years?
Yes, thank you, Francois. So my name is Jan Dirk from Beuzekom, and I'm with BNP Paribas and responsible for strategic marketing. But I started my career as a treasurer and a cash manager for many years, and so I can definitely relate to the issues which were mentioned so far by the previous speakers, including drawing on some lines. But now, and as Francois explained, we have the view from the bank side, but also from the consultants and the corporates together in the journeys to Treasury. And to come to your question on the APIs, yes, of course we are developing APIs. We are supporting digitalization of our customers. Initially, of course, digitalization or the level of digitalization brought also a weakness into the system when everybody had to go offline and working from home. So that, and it also gives a vulnerability to cyber criminality and fraud, as we just mentioned. So it's a balance for us between digitalization and the human factor in it. Although we do want to develop the seamless treasury journey, as we call it, and exclude as many manual interventions as possible, and have indeed fully digitalized processes. And regarding APIs, particularly, I think it's not something new. APIs. We've been using APIs for many years internally. The new thing is that we use it externally, and that it's commercialized. And there can be many different APIs, either event triggered or embedded in tools. And I think the latter is what we use currently mostly. For instance, with instant payments and real time, and also aiming to get more real time visibility on liquidity, get richer payment initiation, and the different tracking possibilities. And indeed, this is something we do not develop by our own, but as many things, I think we're living in an environment where cooperation and platforms are the new ecosystems, and that's another reason why we're a strong supporter of the initiatives from EACT and with the different partners.
Okay, so thanks, and I do agree. So I like this idea of co-creation together with Treasury, because it's easy to complain what the banks are not supplying with, but it's better to participate and to create with the API, banks and Treasury, the solution we need for the future, and maybe to roll out it for the other customers. So, and the second thing I keep from you comment, it's the real time. So it brings us to the next question. So one of the key themes in Treasury today is the Treasury on demand. And is it something that your C-level or your CFO is requesting? How do you respond to this immediate request? You have multiple requests, and some of our peers told us that they were bombarded by question and demand for extra reporting, sensitivity, stress testing, etc. So, how do you respond to this more immediate demand request to produce faster adult reporting? What are your views about this real-time Treasury objective? So, Suzanne briefly mentioned that in her answer. So, is it something that is really an issue for you? I don't know. It's a question for all. I don't know, Sarah Jane. Do you have any comment on the Treasury on demand issue? You are muted, so if you can unmute.
Mute. There we go. I'm unmuted again now.
Perfect.
Okay. So Treasury on demand, I mean, I would say, first of all, that I'm actually not getting a lot of demand from my C-suite for real-time information about Treasury. I would say they don't have time during their busy days to work out whether or not they've gone to the right place. So they get reports from exceptional basis if something's wrong. But I do think that it will be a big advance in Treasury technology, hopefully lead to, as we said, information is key to all of this. So it would lead to better and faster decision making. So at GSK, for example, with the Treasury management system now integrated with our ERP platform, we're able to look at real-time invoices as they're booked, work out whether or not to hedge them or not, wherever they are in the world, which is an extremely powerful way of recouping the cost of that investment, because it's been a long investment over 10 years. And from a C-suite point of view, they just see it as a cost. So I'm saying, well, actually, there are benefits to all of that investment that we've made over the last 10 years, and this is one of them. I also think Treasury on Demand is very relevant for working capital management. We've got various initiatives running at GSK on payables and receivables and working out how to analyze what's going on with those payments and those receipts, and therefore coming up with initiatives to drive better working capital management is good. Yeah, so those were my comments.
No, thanks, and I do agree. Working capital is a real issue because you talk about the credit facilities, but a way to raise funds is also to have a better working capital management and to reduce the needs, and also to improve or to accelerate the financial supply chain. So, any other comment from one of the other ladies, Isabel or?
I would say I fully concur with Sarah Jane, and I like your comment about the investment in Treasury tool and the return on investment that you're getting from it. It's always extremely difficult to sell that business case to senior management. Because it's from time to time very difficult to quantify really the benefits that you can get from such an investment, but definitely, especially during the crisis period, access to information and quick access to information integrated with finance, as you pointed out, is helping out and enabled us indeed to provide decent answers to the different demands that we got. Yes.
Okay. Suzanne, any additional comment?
Yeah, I think we're quite lucky with regards to just cost in that our CFO is a former treasurer, so he understands quite well the risks that we're trying to cover off in Treasury. I think the C-suite are mostly focused on cybersecurity and controls. They like the controls we have embedded within the IT systems. The big thing I found during the crisis and otherwise is we deal a lot of foreign exchange every year, and we've got a $1 billion per annum hedging program where we're hedging out 2, 3, 4 years. So we can get some quite significant mark to markets on that, and it's feeding through to our operating profit, what rates we lock in. So we found we had the CEO and CFO keep asking for that information. So we automated a report for that so that we can just press a button now to get it to them that bit quicker.
Yeah, thank you. So, and to answer all these challenges, so do you plan to change something in your organization? Sarah Jane mentioned the outsourcing, more appropriated skills. So some completely revamp the organization and the IT solution. Any other ideas of what you plan to do in your organization? Do you plan to change your organization or to keep running the treasury as it is at the moment? Anyone want to answer?
This works on levels, doesn't it? It's sort of finance as a whole and treasury in particular. And at GSK, we have a transformation program which has been running as we have been transferring country after country onto the global platform. That's allowed more centralization of activities that previously based in each country. And also enabled us to put everybody on the in-house cash module, move those cash management activities out of each country and into shared financial services. So with that backdrop, what we've ensured in Treasury over the years is the people we have a very small team in London, very, very small team, by the way, just in case anybody's listening to this. And so there's an enormous need we've done the organization that we've currently got with the backdrop that I've just described. So people managing the in-house cash module in SAP reside in Genpact in India mostly, and there are people supervising that activity from London. So it's quite a sort of lean, mean organization at the moment, which we've also just transformed. I'm interested in Isabel's comments because not only are we working on a vaccine together, Isabel, to save the world, you realise, but we've also both got a Treasury transformation project running.
Yeah. And SANOFI actually experienced the outsourcing, and as you say, with the transformation and the different core model, be in procure to pay or CI to C, we experienced the complete outsourcing, and now SANOFI is a kind of deciding to still internalize some services, but under the format of shared services. However, captive, so in internal. So that's we've got a mix of both currently, and I'm not sure what the future will bring in terms of trends, whether we'll go fully internal shared services or external services. That's something that we'll see over the next years. My personal view is through the captive, so the internal shared services. Definitely, you've got synergies, economies of scales. You've got rationalized core processes. So it does make sense. Plus the fact that the people belonging to the internal shared services, they belong to a company, which is their company. So that feeling of belonging to a company from a quality perspective is bringing an added value.
Yeah, thank you. So, but you're right. So we need to modernize not only Treasury but the whole finance department. And digitization is one of the objectives in one long journey. And depending where you stand, but at least you need to change. So coming back to you, to Jan Dirk, what are the lessons, if any, you've learned from this COVID crisis? What do you think Treasury need to implement or to do to become more resilient? Because you participate to all this by-side session we did during this journey to Treasury, let's say, compilation. So any comment you want to make?
Well, I think it's a good idea to look for a strong partner because you can't do that. Can't do it alone. And for instance, we initially the bank was not only supporting in financing in the initial days of the crisis, but also making sure that our customers could still communicate with the bank and the bank with the customers. So it was an enormous drive towards e-signatures, for instance, and also the use of our electronic tokens in the 2 months of the beginning of the crisis, lifted from 20 to 70%. So there was, which made it possible for many treasurers to sign remotely or to have others sign who would not be able to do that otherwise. So that's indeed one thing. The other thing is be prepared and be prepared for the worst. And we've heard a few examples of what can go wrong and where example, and you actually don't know what is going to happen. So if you have your business continuity planning, even then you should adapt it now to the things we've learned from the past. I think that's another important lesson.
Okay, so I don't know if we have questions from the audience at this stage. Daniel, I don't know if you can tell us if we have some questions. Maybe not, but if not, so in your view, what could be the takeaways or the pieces of advice we can give to our delegates? So any, let's say, sort of a major lesson or advice you can give to our auditors? Let's start maybe with Sarah Jane.
Advice for the auditors? I would hesitate to give advice to the auditors. Yeah,
No,
but maybe more broadly, I think I just in all these things, and in this situation in particular, it's communication that's key. So I find it very difficult sitting in a little office in my house, talking to everybody individually on Teams a lot longer to get the messages across than it would otherwise, just bursting into the office and having a group conversation for 10 minutes, going to get a cup of coffee. It's much quicker. And so I think more ways of communicating, better ways of communicating is key. Yeah, that's my main observation of 6 months actually. I'm finding it very, very difficult to communicate with my whole team. I'm very good at communicating with a few people in my team, and then inevitably that makes that more hierarchical than it would otherwise be, because I talk to my reports every day and I don't to everybody else in the team every day because I also have got some other things to do, so it just makes it much more rigid. And I think ways of making it more flexible is really important.
Francois, we do have a question in the chat, apparently.
Yeah, but thanks for this point on the coordination, what important. So I see a question. So we have talked about the changes happening now, but where do you see Treasury in 10 years' time? I guess it's a difficult question. So if someone, Isabelle, Suzanne, do you want to pick that question?
I can say where I think we'll be in sort of 5 to 10 years' time is, at the moment, we're very automated within the Treasury team, but we don't have any straight-through processes from our business units right through to execution. I think we feel the kind of checks and controls that we'd need to be confident that what the business units understand that they want to transact is what should get transacted. At the moment, we stop the process at Treasury, we look at it, and then we start the straight-through process. So I can see that it would be more efficient to move things through so that the business unit that wants a particular FX cover, that then flows straight through to execution. But I just think we need the checks and controls to be developed a bit more before we can do that.
Isabelle, any comment on that question? Do you see a potential for what we have not mentioned, but artificial intelligence, about robotics, this kind of thing? Do you see our job really changing over the next 10 years?
It's definitely something that is high on the agenda, and there is a stream at SANOFI really seeing what can be developed in that context, leveraging artificial intelligence. When it comes to Treasury, very often we're talking about predictive forecast and predictive analysis. What makes it difficult is truly to have enough data, enough past data in systems that are pretty uniform system in order to enable such reliable predictive analysis. So to me, definitely having that access to the data in an easier way and more uniform way is something that still is to be further enhanced in order to rely upon predictive analysis or the types of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, we have a lot of data, but if I understand well, we need a certain standardization to make sure that we can make good use of this
Exactly.
huge data we have in Treasury. Any additional comment? Jan Dirk, do you want to comment that question from the bank side? How do you see our job evolving over the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think we will make use of the technologies which are available now. We see, well, sometimes we see technology like distributed ledger technology, which doesn't seem an answer to a current existing problem. But there are many others, and AI were mentioned. I think robotics is definitely something we put in use, and you mentioned. Well, and by the way, if you use more robotics or robotic process automation, there will be more time for the treasurer to do other tasks, more strategic tasks, look at the full supply chain, include procurement, include the commercial side, to make sure, and all aimed at this one goal of making your cash flow forecasting more accurate and be able to predict the future. And I'm a strong believer that we are already making the future together. And you mentioned co-creation earlier. We have, as you know, we have several projects running where we look at indeed issues which can be solved by technology such as onboarding, KYC processes, but also, and which are currently being rolled out without paper and seamless, and also on payment frauds, for instance. And in that area, artificial intelligence can play a big role as well. So I think we're moving towards more use of technology.
I do agree, and I guess our panel will confirm that we still have a long way. You've mentioned rightly KYC, where it's still a complex issue. Despite the KYC registry from SWIFT, we still have a problem. Payment is also an issue where we can benefit from technology. Trade finance, certainly. And you also listed fraud, and we know that cyber risk is an increasing risk. So, in order to respect the timing, so I do propose that we move to the final comment and maybe a wrap up. As I said, I think, and I really encourage you to have a look at the document if you have not yet got a chance to read the document or the previous issues. But the good news in that last one, it was the 5th anniversary, so we decided to have a sort of, let's say, summary of the former edition. So you will also find the interesting result of the European survey run by EACT, 200 corporate professionals across Europe over the main multinational companies. Interesting comment and interesting outcome that you will certainly find in this document. And finally, I wanted to thank everyone for the support and participation, all the persons who gave some case studies, because we have a lot of case studies in this document. It's this issue is an excellent reference document you must read and you must keep. And so if you want to download the document, you can go on the www.journeytotreasury.com. So thanks a lot to the 4 sponsors of this document, but thanks a lot for your participation to this panel. Thanks a lot to Sarah Jane, Suzanne and Isabel, as well as Jan Dirk, and thanks a lot for ACT for hosting that panel. I wish you a very good day and end of conference. Take care.